It's my pleasure to be here to share my experience with you and to share the methodology that we have been working on. As the introduction said, I am a Sport for Development consultant. I have been working for many organizations in the previous 5 years now. I am a professional. I have been a professional athlete for 10 years. I was training athletics, track and field. My disciplines were 100 meter and high jump. And once I finished my career in that sport, I started working in sport organization and started working with sport until if you have any question during the presentation, you can always just raise your hand or just interrupt me. I know we will have space for questions after the presentation, but if you have something right away now, just go ahead and ask. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, good. Okay, what I'm going to talk about is about the difference. What does sport mean? What does sport for development mean? And this kind of a spectrum of sport plus and plus sport, or how do we in sport for development divide sport into 3 different, let's say, segments. What I'm going to start with is the basic thing, and it is the definition of sport, and we all know it. It's international used definition about what is sport, how is it defined. You may find many different ways of how people define sport, but the basic one that is used is that all forms of physical activity that contribute to physical fitness, mental well-being, and social interaction, such as play, recreation, and organized and competitive sport, define what sport is. And as we can see here is that we are mentioning play, recreation, and sport, which are quite similar and different at the same time from one another. So when we talk about play, we immediately say that, okay, children do play, and it is a physical activity, but it's also a fun physical activity that every child can participate in. When we talk about recreation, it immediately comes to our mind that that is a physical activity that people do in their free time, and it's something that people do just to get physically either fit or just to do some recreation in some spare time that they have during the day. It's a bit more organized, but it's just something that they do for recreation. And at the end, when we come to the sport, and we talk about organized sport, that this is much different than what play and recreation is. This is something that involves a lot of rules, a lot of selection for the best athletes, and it involves a lot of competitions, and it's mostly like a job that people do where they can, where they're find better and better and more professional in what they're doing. So there are a lot of differences, but also there are some similarities that come when we talk about play and competitive sport. And when we talk about play, we can say that, first of all, play is a fun activity, is a fun physical activity. It is inclusive, and when I talk about inclusive, it says that all children can play. So when we see children play, we see that all of them are included in the game, even though some of the children says, oh, I don't want to run now in this activity. They will find him something or her something to do in order for him or her to be involved in the activity. So to not stay aside, because the main idea for them is just to have fun and to play. They don't think about, is this inclusive, is this not, how can we involve, but just, they're just, if you're observing them from the other side, you will see that they are really inclusive in what they're doing. But also when it comes to play, there are no some fixed rules what children are doing. They have some rules that they are setting on their own. And of course, when it comes to play, it doesn't require any sport infrastructure. They can do it at home. They can do it outside on the asphalt, on a sport field. So it doesn't require some specific sport infrastructure. In order for the play to be done. And of course, there is no coach when it comes to playing. But when you go to the opposite side, when you go to competitive sport, we can say that sport is also fun. Otherwise, like people wouldn't even start to do it and wouldn't do it. So it has to be to some extent, it has to have some elements of fun. But also, there is a lot of selection, so only the best ones can participate, because otherwise the team wouldn't be the best in what they're doing. There are fixed rules that are set by the team, by the federation, by the general idea of sport. There are some fixed rules. Of course, there is required a special infrastructure. Otherwise, if, for example, you're training, I don't know, basketball in a football field, it's not possible later on to be better in what you're doing, meaning in basketball. So you have to have the specific infrastructure when you're trying to do professional sport. And of course, when we talk about competitive sport, there is a coach who is responsible for the team and for their development. So what we come to and what we want to know is which skills do we develop among the children and the youth people through the play, and which ones do we develop through a competitive sport. So when we talk about the development of these skills, we don't think about the sports skills always. Of course, if I'm on a basketball team, I have to develop my passing skills, my dribbling skills. So everything I have to develop for the sports skills are something that I will be developing through my active participation in the trainings, in the competitions, and so on. But sometimes we need to take a step back and we need to realize which skills are we developing to the people who are part of my team that will be staying with them throughout their life. For example, I can talk for me, as I was an athlete, and after many, many years, I realized that my discipline in life comes really much from my professional days. I have the discipline to wake up every day at 5, to go at training at 6, to eat at a certain time, and to be very disciplined what I'm doing. But also I have some certain kind of respect when it comes to older people, because I had respect for my older coach. So I know how to talk to older people. I know how to respect them and so on. So sometimes we don't think clearly about these skills that we're developing, but we are developing some skills with the youngsters through their years of being in our team and through their years of training. And for me, I have listed some of the skills that we are developing, but there are many, many more skills. For example, I have here competitiveness, teamwork, customization, responsibility, discipline, communication, decision-making, problem-solving, but there are many, many more skills that we are developing, such as self-confidence, self-motivation, and many more. So when we see now these skills, we immediately say, okay, yes, we're developing teamwork, because if I'm in a football club, I have to have teamwork in order to work with my teammates that are here in the team. When it comes to discipline, I already said you have to be at 5 on the training. You cannot be late, otherwise you will miss the warm-up. So you will, be late for the training. You have to have decision-making skill develop, because let's put ourselves in the shoes of someone who is playing right now. He's or she is on the field. She gets the ball now, and now she needs to make a decision. What do I do now? Do I run forward? Do I pass the ball back? Someone is coming. You have to take all the factors around you in consideration. So how will I make this decision? And that is why it is important during the training to develop these skills among the youngsters who are in our team, for them to be better players. But we can develop these skills if we take a step back, we take a look at the skills, and we see why do we need all of these skills and why, if I develop, for example, teamwork on my player, he will contribute or she will contribute better to the whole team. And how will I make a better team if I work with them on teamwork? So when we talk about why do we need them and towards what do these skills contribute to the youth, we need to take one skill and then to think, why will I need to develop this skill? Why with developing this skill, what will that contribute to my team later on? What will I do for my club? So when we talk about this, these skills, and if we're developing them, we know that towards developing this, we can help the players for them to get to know themselves, first of all, better. They will know their strengths and their weaknesses, but also they will get to know the players around them. They will get to know how is the best way to communicate to people, how is the best way to solve some problem that arises in the team. So they will also get to know the strengths and weaknesses on the other people around them, but they will also know and learn how to work with those strengths and weaknesses on the other people and their own. They will also know how is to behave in a team, what do I have to do in order to better behave in a team. Also how to treat an older person, as I said, also like the respect that a child has to a coach, but also how to work towards achieving my goals. For example, when I was an athlete and I say, okay, next year I want to jump 180, for example, and then we sit with the trainer, the coach, and we develop a plan on how to achieve my goal. And in that moment, I know that to achieve my goal, I know what the goal is, I know the steps, and I know that it takes a certain period of time to achieve that goal. And that is also important so much in your everyday life, in the school, in your employment and so on, that you know how to set goals, you know how to develop the steps to get to the goal, but also you know that there is a certain period of time that needs to pass in order for you to achieve that goal. And also how to improve in other areas. Whatever we said right now, it takes us to the definition of what really is sport for development. And what I'm going to show you right now is the definition of sport for development that is like a general and an international use of what is. But take in mind that whoever is using sport for development, I have many times been presenting about sport for development and people come and coaches come and say, oh, I have been using this, but I just didn't know that it was called like this. Or they have been using it, but under a certain different name. So this is just a definition, but each organization, each person that is using sport for development, they can change and they can adapt this definition more closely to what they feel more connected to. So when we talk about sport for development, that means that sport for development refers to the international use of sport, physical activity, and playing to attain some specific development objectives, including most notably the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So when we see like this the definition, we see that in sport for development, we use sport, physical activity, and play to get to some specific development objectives. And that is also important. What I would call for us, what I have been using and how I tell and how I explain what sport for development is I always say that we use sport as a tool to achieve some development objectives in our community, in our society. For us, most notably, I always use the development of life skills for the youngsters to attain some specific development objectives. I always connect the soft skills that we are developing to some UN Sustainable Development Goal. I don't know if you know if you have talked about the UN Sustainable Goals, or you have seen them, or you have not. But the UN Sustainable Goals are 17 goals that are formed to transform our world, let's say. In 2014, in the UN Assembly, they formed these 17 goals, and they said until 2030, we will have no poverty, zero hunger, good health for everyone, quality education for everyone, gender equality, and so on. So if you see on these 17 goals, they're all interconnected among each other. And all the new happenings that around in the world, not only in sport, but in other fields, they're all connected to these goals. So when we talk about sport for development, because sport for development is an innovative way of looking to sport and using sport, always sport for development connects and goes back to some of these sustainable development goals. And sport for development works basically on some of them, not on all of them. So I will tell you on which ones it works. So it works on good health and well-being, which is the number 3. It works on number 4, quality education. It works on gender equality, number 5, on decent work and economic growth, on reducing inequalities where social inclusion comes to climate action and peace, justice, and strong institutions. So this is where sport for development is focused. In organizations that use sport for development, they link it and they go back to some of these goals. But if you take a look, for example, if I want to work on the good health and well-being, then I also work on the number 1, on number 2, and on number 6, because I cannot have a good health if there is poverty, if there is hunger, and if there's no clean water. So basically, sport works for some of them, but they are all interconnected. So if I say that I work on good health and well-being, which is number 3, I actually work on 4 of these goals. So now this is a huge topic. And if I say that I want to develop skills through sport for a young person to have, I don't know, better work, let's take the number 8, because number 3 is quite obvious. Everyone who does sport contributes towards good health and well-being. But if I take number 8, which I have been working on for the last 3 years, it is how we develop some certain skills among the youngsters for them to be better employees later in life. So that means that I, first of all, take this decent work and economic growth as the G. I learn about it, I develop it, and I see, okay, so for a person to have decent work, which skills does he or she need to develop in order to be a better employee afterwards? So we take the skills, we take teamwork, communication, all the skills that are important for that young people, and we create activities for them, and we create activities are linked with sport that is fun, that is attractive for young people, but at the same time they develop certain skills. When we talk about sport for development, we already said that sport for development is an inclusive environment. So that means that all the people are involved. All children, no matter if they have some disabilities or not, if they have some needs or not, if they're good in a certain sport or they're not, all of them are welcome in sport for development activities. So the coach has to develop activities that are inclusive, that are welcoming for everyone. But at the same time, they have to be fun, attractive for the young people, but also have to be educational. That means that at the end, they have to send some message. And that is the example. For example, if I want to work on communication, and now I have 30 children here, I have to do activities. For example, I will take football elements, I will take shooting, passing, and dribbling. We are going to learn about those 3 specific football skills today, but we will link communication inside of them. So during the training, I will give them some assignments where they have to talk to each other, or they can use some mimics, some gestures, And at the end of the training, we will talk about how did they communicate between them. Did they use some kind of non-verbal communication? Did they use just verbal communication? What is communication? What is verbal? What is non-verbal communication? So apart from them just noticing what we have done, we are also at the end having reflection sessions where we are talking about that. And this is the most important part of sport for development. So whatever you do in a training session, at the end of the training session, you sit in a circle and you talk about what happened on a training session. And always in sport for development, we leave at least 10 minutes at the end of the training to talk with the youngsters, with the children about what happened to the training. But in this circle of reflection, we are not just talking about how was the training. We are not just talking about football. We are not just talking about basketball. We are talking about the educational element that we have brought to that training. If my goal was to teach them communication, then when we are in a circle, then I talk about communication. We talk about why communication is important to football. What do they think? Can they be better team players if there is no communication in the team? So we are talking about communication and we're teaching them what is communication, but with something that is more close to them, which is football or basketball, the sport that they're doing. And we are bringing that back to them so they can better understand what is communication and why communication is important. And in the end of the training session, if we see that there is an opportunity to mention, we always say, okay, now if we go out of this field now, what do you think, where will you implement communication later on? Do you need communication in school? Do you need communication at your job? What do you think? And so on. So that is how we talk about and how we bring that educational element. So most people, when we say sport for development, they confuse it with development of sport. So that is why we have this explanation of what are the differences between sport and development of sport and sport for development. When we talk about development of sport, we are just thinking about the sport itself. So if I take football, I'm talking how to get my team to be better in the sports system, to be better in the football federation. So I'm just thinking how to better my my sport and my team within the sports system. But when I talk about sport for development, it is more focused on the social changes that I will bring through the use of football. So I'm more talking about how to develop this person so he or she can create a better impact in the community later on, rather than be a better athlete or a better football player. So that is the difference. So when we talk about development of sports, we talk about developing our sport within the sports system. And it's more focused on professional sports. But when we talk about sport for development, then we are more focused about the social impact and the social changes that we will bring to the community if we work on those players that are in our team. So now we come back to this sport plus and plus sport, which is the module. And that is that when we talk about sport, we talk and we focus only on sports and athletic development. So here are I, as a coach, I focus on developing motoric skills. I focus on developing your speed, your jumps. I focus everything that will help you be a better athlete when I talk about sports. When I use Sport Plus, I work again on the sports and athletic development, but I also want to work on your personal and social development as also an important goal, because I, as a coach, now realize that even if you can run fast with the ball, if you don't communicate good with your team, you won't be a very good player because you don't know how to communicate. Or if you're not a team player, then you won't pass the ball, and you need to know why team player is important in football. So I'm also focusing on developing your personal and social skills for you to be a better asset, let's say, to my team. In the same time, I'm focusing on the sports and athletics development that you need as a player to be better. But when we come to plus sport, those two are very different. So plus sport is when my first thing in mind is your personal and social development. So I need to know if you develop those skills, because you will make much positive impact in the society. And sport is something that I keep something back in my mind, meaning that I use sport as just as a tool to attract you. So you to come in my team. I use football, for example. Many people love, all of the people love football. They come to my team because of the football, but then I use football just as an asset to bring you here. And then I work with you on the personal and social developmental, meaning I work with you on your life skills. We develop life skills, but football is not that important. So I won't work with you on your speed, on your dribbling levels. I will just work with you on your skills. So that is how this is developed. And it's very important to know that plus sport is something, it's sport for development, and it's used basically from organizations, from young youth organizations, NGOs, sport organizations that are not that focused on the sport. They are more focused on having some different, attaining some different objectives. What I was talking about with the UN Sustainable Goals, those goals can be achieved through the plus sport element. But when we talk about sport plus, that also can go into professional sport. That means that in professional sport, you can be focused on the athletic and sports development of your athletes, but you can also bring that plus element where you are developing the personal and social skills of your players. So sport plus and plus sport, they go into sport for development. But when we talk about sport, that's just development of sport. When we come back to this, under development of sports, it goes just sport, and on sport for development, it goes sport plus and plus sport. So this is already explained. When I talk about the development of sport, I talk about better sport infrastructure, increase the participation in sports, scout more athletes, make my team more professional, and this falls under the first element, which is sport. But when I talk about sport for development, that means that I am working on better health and well-being. I'm working on some social goals. I'm working on non-formal education with my players, and that falls here into these two categories, which are sport plus and plus sport. And this is the element that I already explained to you. So as you can see, the sports sector comes with the sport club, sport federation, international sport organizations, and those are all elements that go into sport, and basically some of them go into sport plus. But when it comes to the educational sector, NGOs, municipalities, educational centers, they go into sport plus and plus sport, which is sport for development. Okay, I will stop sharing my screen now here. And I would ask if someone has some kind of question. Do you want to discuss something further from the presentation, or do you have something that you would like to share? Some ideas, some of these things that you have been using, but you didn't know that you were using. Some of you have heard about the sport for development methodology, because this was, in general, we can go into many details about sport for development, and it has a lot of segments, but this was just like the basic general overview of what is sport for development. And later, if we want to work on some other aspects and we want to get into more details, we can also do that. For example, how to create a sport plus program for my football club, for my basketball club, or something like that. Or how do I start using the plus sport methodology? So there are a lot of elements, methods, tools that are out there. So how you can start and how you can develop into this sport for development methodology. And yeah, just this was a general overview of what is it and how and why is it important for you to not only be focused on the sport elements in your club, but also be focused on the players and how to develop their skills for a certain purpose that is either on the field or outside of the field, so they can leave a better impact in their society, in their community, but also in your team when it comes to those skills. Yeah, if someone has any question or anything to add, I would be happy to answer and to discuss.
Let me be honest with you today. It's my first time I've heard of the concept sports plus and plus sports.
Yeah.
As I'd mentioned earlier, these are things that we do, but we do not know. We do not know exactly how maybe to incorporate such in our training programs. You're quite elaborative and quite specific on how to include these kind of skills in our trainings, and of course the objectives of whatever you want to achieve after now the normal sports training. I think it's very informative, and maybe just ask you to maybe do this again next time, because it's not something that most people really know or know that they should do it. Because like you mentioned about communication, teamwork, such kind of skills, it's good to bring them in the context of training, so that people understand how best they can use them in training and in their social life. Yeah. So for me, that was very profound. Yeah, we do have sessions after training, but just to discuss about the sports, not to discuss other strategies, other social strategies that can help you outside sports and at the same time within the sports.
Yeah, I also see that like many people also don't know, there are many clubs also say, okay, we do education through sport, but it is also falls under sport for development. So as I said, everyone says it in a different way. And yes, many of the clubs, after the training, they just talk about the training and how it was, but they don't take into consideration the skills that those children have developed during the training. And on those reflectional circles, maybe some of the youngsters can even say, okay, I didn't feel good this training, and you can just discuss why didn't. Maybe someone said to him something that wasn't okay. So now this is the time that you can also discuss and learn through that experience that young person had. But also when I talk to coaches, it is quite a bit complex to understand simple from one presentation. Okay, now tomorrow I will work on communication with my youngsters. There is a certain methodology and a certain step that a person or a coach has to pass through. Which is also something that it can be presented like certain steps that we also work with our coaches for. There are 7 steps that you can take one skill, one social skill, for example, and take one sports skill, and then create a training out of those 2 skills. So there are certain steps that you as a coach have to pass at the beginning. Then at the end, it will all come to you naturally, but until you get in that moment, you have to do that step by step in order to know that this is the right way you're going. And in my opinion is that also when I started, I was very afraid to also talk to the children at the end, because I didn't know if they understood the idea. For example, I wanted to work with them on decision making, and I didn't know that I achieved that, because you will not know if you have achieved that until you talk to them and you see that they really understood, or they made some decisions on the training. And my advice is that when you're starting with the sport for development methodology, don't be afraid to just some trainings you just fail. You just make a training, but you didn't at the end, they didn't understood your idea that you had to work on decision making, but that is okay. You know, they had fun, they were training. You saw at the end of the reflection, they didn't make any decisions. They were maybe working on teamwork, and then you can better yourself. You can work on your sessions, and next time you can try to do it again and again. So it's not something that is that simple to be achieved.
So it's something you plan way before the sports training session. So it's part of training an effective training plan.
Yes. Yeah. But every effective training plan, you need to a certain time to see if that is effective or not. So if it's not, we don't have to be afraid of that or something. We just see that we need to work more on that and to be more, maybe to still read some things and to try some new things. But whenever we try some new things, there is that 1% of you not succeeding with your mission or your idea, but then that is still okay if you continue working on it and developing in that aspect.
Okay, there's a question on the chat. Are you able to see it?
Yes. Yeah, I can see that. Well, basically for sport for development, the better athletes who will get the most out of it, and you as a team can get the most out of it, is the players who are in development. So that means that children and younger people who are in also their personal development in their life. So they are now in a process of learning how to manage their strengths, their weaknesses, their reactions. So that is the best time that you can learn and teach them about these skills and develop the skills with them. So when they get to elite performance, they will already have to know what is teamwork, why do I need teamwork, what is communication, why do I need, what types of communication there are. So the better way to start is with the novice and intermediates, or the children and the youngsters, to start developing those skills. And then you just build on those skills and you just maintain those skills in the elite performance, with the elite performance. And for the other question that Sarah asked in the chat, I can see that there is a question in the chat. So it depends on the age of the children. For example, if we have, let's say, children from 10 or 9 to 10, those children are very small, and then you talk to them just about teamwork and you relate that to what they can link to it. For example, we have a training session now, and at the end of the training session, for example, we have football, and at the end of the session, we talk about teamwork. So we talk about why do they need, but in a more simple words, okay? So why do you think you need to work with each other? Why do you think that is important? What will happen if we all work individually? So through questions, you see what they think, but you also explain to them at the end that this is called teamwork, and teamwork is important for achieving some specific goals that they will understand as children. But as they grow older, you try to talk more specifically and to develop more specific skills. For example, you want to now learn teamwork, and then you talk about the real words. What is teamwork? What do they need it? Why is it important in their sport? What do they think will benefit? Why do they think they will benefit from having a developed teamwork skill? And also not only talk about the sport, but also at the end ask them, what do you think? Where do you need teamwork in your life? Why is that important? What do you think need teamwork in your school? If you want to work on a specific goal, for example, social inclusion or employability, you can always link that to that. For example, why do you think social inclusion? Why do you think teamwork is important for social inclusion? Or why do you think teamwork is important for employability? Why do you think you need that in a working space, and so on? So you can always, as they grow older, use more specific words and describe that skill in a more specific and more complex way of seeing. But when they're youngsters, you need to go step by step. sport for development. Okay, so how do profit-oriented organizations? I have been working also with profit-oriented organization, which in the activities that you're using with the youngsters, if you want to develop some specific skills. For example, I had a youth organization. They were working with teaching youngsters for employability and preparing them for employability. But they were doing that just in the classroom. And then when they were introduced to the sport for development methodology, they just started using sport in their educational training. So they just started with small activities that they were developing some kind of skills that the youngsters needed for employability at the end, rather than they just sitting and writing about those. They were just discussing about employability and how does it link to these skills, why is it important, and how is it that important. And also a lot of organizations, they use sport for development is a huge field. So it cannot be just, it doesn't have to be just sport for development like the word. You can just say, I'm doing work educational for youngsters through the use of sport elements, and that's it. So you can just switch by the activities that you are doing, start doing some small sport activities to make it more fun and more interesting for the people who are at your workshops. Someone wants to give out a scenario? Sarah?
So I'm just trying to unmute. So first I want to say thank you for the informative forum that you're having. So I work with development children, and I have a scenario when it comes to where you want to handle a certain situation. So you find a child who's very good and is under development, very, very, very good, but he constantly comes late to training. He's a very good player. So, I mean, the discipline is not really top notch. And this is a child who is between 8 to 9 years. So 8 to 9 years, I mean, if you pull him out from the team, he goes away with the other students. So you want to bring in a situation where you are able to handle these players, but you also want to keep the rest of the team. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so we also in sport for development, in my personal opinion, it's never good to leave out a player. As you said, it will go out with the other players, and this is a better environment for him to be in rather than to be on the street and to be out. So we need to find ways how to, let's say, develop this discipline in those youngsters. So I would first of all start by talking, either individual or either at the end of the training, to talk about why is discipline important, not to point out at that person, but also to start to talk about why it's important to come on time. So first try by educating why is the warm-up important and link it to him or to them. So for example, saying, okay, warm-up is important because we warm up your muscles in order for you to be better runner afterwards, or you to be better so you won't have injured. So just try to explain the concept of what is the start of the training and why is it important to not miss the training. So without pointing out at him or her that he is late all the time, start to talk about why is it important to be on time, what do you other people think, something like that, that you don't just point out at him or her that he's late all the time, because sometimes children can also back down. You're saying to them, you're always late, and on the next turn, he will again be late because you said it in front of the whole team. So just try to talk in a circle, to create an educational setting where you try to explain what is discipline and that why is it important to be coming on time and how they will benefit from coming on time. And then if you see that it doesn't work, maybe you can just see with that person individually and just talk to that person and just try by questions, asking him, is everything okay? Can you manage to come on training? What is, not just saying him directly, you're always late, you need to be on time, but just with questions around, try to make him understand that he is being late, and try to open the space that he can come to you and say to you, okay, maybe something is happening that we don't know. Maybe he has some kind of other problem that he's late for. Even if he doesn't have, it's good to give them the opportunity to just speak out and say, why are they being all the time late? So after that, when you hear them, maybe they will change the way they are doing things because of someone heard them.
Okay. Then just the last one also, in terms of now development, is winning necessary? Are you coaching these children to, are you coaching them to compete? Are you coaching them to win? Would you want to bring in, if you are to do your analysis, would you want to bring, or rather to bring winning to be part of the game, or you just want them to enjoy and have fun at this stage of development?
Yeah, it is different. So when we do just sport for development programs, winning is not important. Did they develop the skills that we wanted them to develop are more important. But when I go to a club, professional club, at a certain level professional, sorry, at a certain level professional, then yes, winning is important, but let's not put that much pressure of winning. Winning will come if we have a good, compact team and if we work with that team. So what we always do is we set some kind of core values, 1, 2, 3, and we talk with the team. Okay, if we said that in this team, it's very important that we respect each other. Okay, in this team, it's very important for us to communicate best. And at the end of a match, we don't discuss if we lost, for example, we don't discuss and we don't put that much pressure. Oh, we lost today. We talk about, did we keep these 3 core values among each other? So did all of you felt that there was teamwork in the team? Did you all felt that there was communication in the team? So we have core values that we need to follow. Winning will come if you, first of all, develop the team that they are playing in. So it depends on the years. If they're elite professionals and they need to win, okay, yes, we will put a bit much more pressure on the winning, but let's just back up and try to not be always about the winning. The winning will come if they are satisfied with the team spirit. And when a person is satisfied, they will put 101% in the game, rather than being just, oh, wait, I missed this shot. Maybe someone will yell at me afterwards. So they put a lot of pressure in them and they're not focused on the game. So just try to take their focus of winning and that pressure, because that is a huge mental pressure for the players, and try to talk to them about the other core values that are in a team and in a sport, and that winning will come later on.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. So if I understood right, is that you are trying to find solutions? How do other people come to your trainings?
Yes.
Yeah, that is also something that you can do, but it is also very important to talk to them. And if you find that the common thing is that they lack the transport to my training, then as a coach, if I want them to come, then I can also sometimes try to find other resources and go to other people asking for some kind of a help or support to help them to join my training.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm having the last question. It has just crossed my mind. I'm not sure if I should be able to ask or time is up.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, so it has just crossed my mind that I also need some explanation, or rather I need solution. You have a group of 50 and you do not have enough equipment, or rather enough resources, but you have a group of 50 and you have players, and this is developments, you have players who have come in today and they are like 10, but they are not at par with the group that you've been coaching. How do you want to handle this? Do you want to separate these kids from the rest, or do you want to involve them, or how do you go about it? Still on development.
Yeah, this is still development, and this is, as I said, there are different topics. So this is, we call that a step model, which is how to manage this kind of groups that are so different. The first thing is, if they're not that professional, you can either put them together and sometimes even modify some rules of the game so they can both participate. For example, I don't know, no physical contact in this game because they're much smaller than you or something like that. But we need to see if that game will be, again, fun for both of them, either for the youngsters or for those that are 15s. So it is very important to put them together in some moment of the training and then bring them apart and they play. But for them to not feel that they are being set apart, you can maybe, as the training starts, warm them up together, do the warming up together, and then develop the field on 2 spaces, and they're doing the same exercise, but the ones that are 10-year-olds are on this side and the 15-year-olds are on this side. So they're doing something parallel at the same time, so they're both having fun. They're not thinking or seeing the other side and saying, oh, I wish I would be there. No, because they have to be focused on what they are playing in their fields. And then at the end, bring them again together for the cool down and just set them together. So it's very important to, at some point, they be together. They can be divided into 2 groups, but always try to make the same exercise, even though they are divided. And then bring them together for the cool down.
So again, during trainings, during game, after maybe training, after warm up and everything, so you bring in a game situation, but then you notice something very interesting, that one player from your team is a physical challenge. It's actually a physical challenge, and they tend to be neglected by the rest. So this is something you're noticing, like when the game is going on. And again, it's something I also just need to get from you as an expert. So how, again, do you go about it? Because it's the physicality does not necessarily push this boy or rather this girl out from the field. And you also want this physical person to be part of the team. Remember, because it's development, so they are growing together. So how do you handle it again?
Yeah, so if we have a person that has some physical, as I understood, he has some disability, right?
Yes, the disability, yes, yeah. Right.
So there are 2 things how you can handle this, in my opinion. The first one is that you can either modify the game, not saying that you are modifying the game because of that person, because that will be shameful for him or her. So you either say, okay, so now let's try and play without physical touch. Let's try and play that everyone has to catch the ball before we score. So you change some kind of a rule, or you implement some new rule inside your game in order for him or her to be more inclusive or included in the game. But if you see that that person is slowing down the other ones and they cannot progress because of that, you either use the same method, either when everyone is doing individual work, like in warm-up, they are just warming up on their own, you put that person there, and at the cool down, you put it again. But when it comes to the main part, you either call that person and say, okay, you will be the coach today with me, let me set the field, let's discuss about, so you try to involve him as much as you can, maybe being next to you or maybe helping in some other part of the training. But then when they're playing something physical that he cannot be part of, but then at the end, you again bring that person to the game, and when he can do something with their own abilities.
Interesting. That's very interesting, because it's one of the things that you encounter as you're doing it. So I think it's very interesting, and it's something I also want to implement just to test what it is that you've told me. If it works, of course, then I'll have to report back that it really worked. Then lastly, in terms of selection criteria, I want you also to help me in terms of selection criteria. How will you select your team? You have a group of 50, they've all been training. you want to take them for a tournament probably. And of course, remember, winning is not everything at this stage, but you are only able to carry 15 players. You have a group of 30. And you want, when they come back, you still want the group of 30 to continue training. So I just want to understand from your end, your selection criteria, 1, and then 2, how do you select your captains?
Yeah, well, that's always tricky, because once you make the selection, you have to, it depends on your approach, how you do the selection. So for me, first of all, it's very important, the education behind that. So children need to be very clear why you're making that selection, so they won't feel neglect, or they won't feel like they are not worthy for the team. So you really need to make a good educational session about, okay, now we have to choose 15 because they have to be in a competition, and you need to discuss about their feelings. How do you feel, and so on. Either you make a small competition between them, the ones who are being behind, or you explain to them that they can set goals and strive toward being better next year, so they can be also in the first team. So education for them to understand, why are you doing this? It's very important. Most of the coaches, they just do the selection. They say, okay, you 15 are the best, you are going to play. And the other ones feel like they're not good at all and they want to go out. Education is very, very important in that moment. You need to educate them why those 15 players are better and why are they going forward in that moment and why are they not. So they can stay in the team. You need to be empowering that they need to stay at your team until the next season, because next season they may be at that team. But you always have to be honest with them, and you have to say that they may be or may not be in that team, because at the end, next year, they may not be in that team. They may still not be that good to be in that team. But I think that explanation, education, and having their options, having them to know the options is very, very, very important.
Thank you.
So good one.
Thank you.
Is there any, we are running out of time. Is there any more last burning question? If not, I'll have to take this opportunity to thank Nadica for her time, share with us her knowledge and experience. And I believe all of us, we've learned a lot from her. And if possible, we'll request her to do another session, maybe an advanced one or a repeat of this at a convenient time. Otherwise, thank you all for your time. Please feel free if you have any topics that you'd want us to discuss, or if you have any presenter in mind you'd want us to get in touch with, to come and present to us. We will really appreciate that. Otherwise, thank you all for coming, and bye.